June the 2nd, 2026. My name is Francisco Gaffney, and this is my daily streaming all about governance, risk, compliance, and advisory boards. And this week, we are reviewing in more details, more specifically, the advisory board operating system model that you have in front of the screen. Particularly today, we are going to talk of the top of the model, which is the commercial acceleration. So allow me to highlight that portion. So we are going to focus on these particular areas. Your scaling, how you scale your company with your brand, your people, and your partnerships. And when we're talking about scale, we have to make a distinction. When a company is scaling, is increasing the revenue, right? But the operating expenses remain pretty much the same, or they have some movement, but it's not a big movement. So you don't need more capital, more resources to scale. What you need is, or what is happening, is that your revenues are increasing, but your operating expenses continues more or less in a flat line. And I'm generalizing a big time here, but actually that's pretty much the principle. So it's like a wedge, right? It's a wedge. Increase revenues, operating expenses are more stable. But what is a challenge when you are scaling, right? So this is most founders think that scaling means more sales and just that's it, but it is not. So scale means that the business can win, deliver, and grow without a founder pulling every commercial lever, right? And here's a big challenge, because what I said is you are wishing, and I'm sorry to say this term, but you're really wishing that your company scale, but you cannot scale if you are the center of absolutely everything. And absolutely everything seems to be too much and too harsh, because you have teams, you have people, you have your structures and systems. But let's unpack this today, and you will start to understand what I mean with this. So it's a different standard. So you have a strong sales because if you are pretty much the brilliant person in the room, and you can tell better the story, you can read the client better, you can spot the real objections, you can make the buyer feel safe, and they can turn a messy conversation into a deal, right? So this is where you start to understand, actually, yeah, we have the system, we have the processes, we have the people, but when you start to look into these kind of things, you say, oh, probably I'm involved, always looping back into to unlock things that the team should do. But seems that you're gifted with something that nobody else is. But it's also a hidden problem. The hidden problem is because you are the real sales system. It's not your teams, even if you have a sales team. So, and that's when that happens, the company does not scale really. It's just literally stretches. But guess who's stretching? You are stretching, not a company. So let's take a look at three problems that you might experience right now with this. So the problem number one is that the brand is still living in your voice. You can ask yourself these questions. If you were not in that call, would the buyer still understand why the business is different? What makes you different from anybody else? Or is a website explaining that correctly? Is a proposal explaining that correctly? Proposal that you don't do, somebody else does in your company. Does the sales team explain that correctly, as you will explain it, or turn questions or objections around as you would do it? Are the partners, so that ecosystem that are selling on your behalf as a value resellers or distributors, are explaining the things that you would do? If the client feels the same trust when they talk to you or when they talk with somebody else in your organization, could be distributors, sellers, your sales team, etc. So a lot of firms have a brand, but the real brand is still you, the founder. So that feels very flattering. I give you that. That's not the problem. But also it's a risk, because if the story only works when one person tells it, the business has not turned the reputation into an asset. Pretty much it's still everything revolving around you. The problem number two is that people are busy but not fully equipped. And what I mean with this is a team is working hard, sales are happening, proposals are going out, calls are being made, but a team might not have a clear playbook, the strong proof, the proper role clarity, or enough decision rights. Sometimes enough decision rights, so the capacity to say yes or no, or decide one thing or the other without checking with you is a big problem. So they keep pulling you in back into those deals. And you might hear things like this: can you join the call? Can you review this proposal? Can you handle this partner? Can you speak with this client? So you think you're helping? Do you think that is part of your job? But the team is learning how to be more dependent on you. They don't have the accountability that they should have to make those decisions by themselves. Problem number three is that partnerships are worn by the week, right? So it's a very nice community, but unfortunately they are not doing the job that they're supposed to do. So this is very common. The businesses has a lot of contacts, good relationship, friendly referrals, people who like the founder. But when you look at the numbers, not much is predictable. Some partners send poor feed clients, or actually it doesn't fit at all with your customer profile. Some send nothing for months. Some take time, but produce little value, right? So it's a lot of volume by little value. Some have no clear joint plan with yourself or your organization or your teams. That is not a partnership system, really. That is a contact list with good manners. So yeah, it's very nice, it's very polite, but actually, effectively, when you look into the bank account, which is a real test or a real acid test of the quality of those relationships in terms of returns, you don't see much movement there. So in other words, imagine that your organization is built with several pillars that are holding the roof, and that roof is the business that is grow externally. So brand, people, and partnerships. And they're holding up all this commercial roof, right? So if one of these pillars is weak, you as the founder ends up standing underneath with both hands in the air trying to stop it from falling, right? So, or holding the pillar to make sure that it doesn't break and keep holding the whole organization. Yeah, uh, very silly example, but sometimes it feels like that you're holding the pillar so it doesn't break, because if that particular pillar breaks, the whole thing start to come to shambles and can fall. Just think about it. So as an advisor, what I would propose to consider in this following is the following. That's what I would propose to consider. So number one, take yourself out of the story and see what is left. That's an interesting exercise. So that sounds harsh, perhaps, but it's very useful. Ask this question: can the team explain the offer in plain words? Right? I mean, you might say, well, that they should. Well, ask them. Say, tell me what you are selling, how you're selling it. Can they show the proof? Can they talk about the method? Can they show why the business is different? Can they explain the results without using the founder charisma, your right? So they people have different personalities. So your personality is not their personality. So they might not have the charisma that you have, but they have other skills, other charisma. Can they leverage their own to explain exactly the same thing and achieve the same results, or even sometimes better than yourself? So if not, the first job is to turn your dependency of knowledge into a commercial asset. And that might mean clear pitch, better case studies, stronger onboarding, better sales training, tighter partner materials, or a simple one-page method that a whole team can use. You cannot reproduce, and this is many times I see frustration in people that say they cannot do it like me. I'm everything falls into me at the end. It's true, but guess what? 80% of the things that you do, 80% of the things that you do can be replicated to the T. 80%. That extra 20% is something that actually can be learned. Can be learned. It's a skill that is transferable. And those transfer skills are the things that start to less the dependency on you, and the things that are going to start to empower the teams to make it more accountable. but it takes a little bit of a time to understand which is this 80-20, which is a Pareto rule practically. So you are not all the time doing the things or reviewing the things that actually have to be reviewed every single time because, oh, you don't know how to do this, or, oh, let me do it my way because I have 20 years experience doing this. But guess what? When you started, those 20 years experience didn't exist, but you can transfer that knowledge. The second thing I suggest is look at people through the lens of scaling, right? This is not about it's not about asking, are they good people? They are good people, by the way. That is the better question. Let's put it this way: are they carrying the right part of the commercial machine? They are good people. Nobody gets up in the morning trying to fail. This is not the case. The case is, are they carrying the right part of the commercial machine? So who owns the new businesses? Who owns the accounts? Who owns the partnerships? Who owns the pricing discipline, right? Who owns the proof and case studies? Who owns the brand story? And probably all these things are in your head right now and it's not documented everywhere. So how people could be accountable of these things if they are not documented everywhere, there is not a standard operation procedure or a playbook or whatever you want to name it that transfer that knowledge, that capacity from your head to the teams to deliver. So if the answer keeps coming back to you as you have to do it, then the scale system is not ready. It's still on depending on you all the time. The third thing I would suggest is clean up the partnerships. And here's a harsh one. Look at the partner list, the distributors, the resellers, the valid added resellers, you name it. And ask which relationship produce quality, work, margin, and trust, right? Some partnerships needs more structure. You can fix that. Some need a joint plan, right? They are a very good connection. They are very good in the market. You have a good extended commercial base, but they need to do something together because otherwise by themselves, they won't be able to do it because they don't have the time, they don't have the skills, they don't have the initiative, you name it. But do a joint plan together with them. And you will see that actually when you are the supplier and you work together with your distribution teams, is a better way to do business and is more rewarding. Some of them needs better commercial rules, right? So the terms, the contract, the clauses, the incentives, you name it. And some need, unfortunately, to be ended. That is a bit cold, but you have to be clear. Some of them, they are not producing the things that they need to produce. They don't have the willingness, or they leave everything so long in time that at the end you invest a lot of time with them, doing whatever you have to do to motivate that relationship so they can produce the business outcomes that you're looking for, and never happen. So you have to stop those relationships. Now, the advisory board helps because it brings distance. You are too close to these relationships many times. So, but an advisory board looks at these problems from the far away and they say, what's going on with this particular batch of partners or distributors or resellers? So if you often remembers the relationship of or the story of those relationships, the board doesn't look at that point of view, but the value of the relationship. They value the relationship, but they also value what is the business outcome that is coming back. So both matters, but only one should decide the future. So the future is, are we producing the business outcomes that are looking for or not? So you can keep the relationship, but commercially probably it's a good time to say we are not in business together anymore. And this is a hard conversation, but guess what? You don't have to make that decision. You can fundament that decision saying, we have a board review about partners, sellers, and distributors, and unfortunately, we are not going to continue with this commercial relationship. And so it's not really you that making that decision, is also is a fundamental decision as a business overall outcome that you're looking to put through this partner and say, listen, this is the way that it's going to work now. We have a very, very tight advisory board supervision, and they're asking us to do this. So if you want to say it's not my fault, well, you have a perfect excuse here. Now, what you gain working with me, that is very, very interesting, because then I can provide you three very clear business outcomes, differentiators, and risk reductions. In terms of business outcomes, you gain a repeatable commercial rhythm. And this is the key, the rhythm, the cadence, the capacity to go again and again and again, and understand where this rhythm have acceleration times and slow down times, because actually you cannot go at full speed all the time. You're going to burn the machine. So you as a founder, you have the sales instincts that become something that the team can use, right? You have the brand story that becomes clearer. You have people that know what they own. They have accountability on what they have to do. So, and the partnerships also becomes cleaner. So in the next 30 days, are not left to hope anymore. They sit in an action tracker with owners, deadlines, and expected results. These are specific business outcomes in terms of your brands, your people, and your partnerships. In terms of differentiators, I build an international advisory board that gives you the talent that you need to scale or to address the scaling problems. So at this particular stage, that means that people who understand brand, sales, marketing, human resources, partnership, finances, and operations. So you bring these talents together. So it's faster to implement than hiring one executive. It is a lower overhead than the big consulting firm, and there is no talent locked in. So when we move into growth, meaning raise capital, assets, and revenues, we bring another talent into the company. So we are not locked in into a scaling team. We are going to look into people that are experts in growing companies. So members are swappable every 6 months. So you don't get stuck with yesterday advice with the things that are mattering today, right? So this is a massive differentiator. And in terms of risk reduction, you reduce the risk that grows slows when you step back, right? So business usually when the owners step back and say, okay, I'm not in the business in every situation, every problem right now. I'm stepping back and looking to own the business. You see a slowdown, and the slowdown happens because actually people are dependencies. So before their removal, the advisory board start to create the mechanisms to help the business to accelerate rather than slow down because you're not there. So if you need to hire people, we are not looking. You are not looking into hire people that goes into a weak system. We are looking into people that goes into a strong system, so they are successful also in their performances. Now, one action you can take home today, and it's doable in 30 minutes or less. Pick one recent deal that needed you all the time or part of the time, and now, if you have that one in mind, replay it. How or why you were needed in that particular deal. It was a matter of trust, it was a matter of pricing, it was a technical detail, was it a confidence, was it a story, was it a client relationship? What made that deal work because you were there, right? So it's like a replaying a movie. So watch that movie again. Why that deal was successful and why you were there. Now, what would need to happen, right? So now you have this movie played back again. What will need to happen so the same deal could move next time without you, right? So let me ask this question again. What will need to happen so the same deal can move on and close next time without you? So what it needs? A better case story, a cleaner proposal, a stronger sales script, a partner pack, a pricing rule, a team member with more authority. So if you write these answers down, that is not the sales problem, actually. That is the scale asset waiting to be built, right? The answers are the assets, because actually that will you will start to understand why you are dependent on your team is dependent on you, because what they need to close the deal perhaps is only one call you involve, what is called an escalation call. Oh, I want to make sure that actually the owner is on board with this. One call. You don't have to go through the whole process with them, right? Just giving an example, doesn't mean it. But if you replay one deal that closed, that you were heavily involved, and you start to understand why you're heavily involved in those deals, and then you start to write down what holes you were covering in that particular deal, you will start to understand the things that your team needs to be accountable for those things, so they don't need you to close the next deals or the future activities of their performances. So let's pause here for today and reconvene tomorrow, because tomorrow we are going to move into the right side of the advisory board operating system, which is growth and capital. And remember what we said: scaling is when your operating expenses pretty much are the same, but your revenue increases. But growth requires capital, because you need higher and more valuable operating expenses, and you need injection of capital, so the revenue increases. That is where the revenue can look strong, but cash, assets, and pricing still a more honest story, right? Because you say, yeah, we can increase revenue, but it's going to be costly, right? So if you lead a company, you're a founder, you are part of the advisory board, you're part of the executive team, your company have 50 employees or more than 10 millions in revenue, for it could be in every currency, euros, pounds, dollars, and the sales still depend too much on your energy, let's have a 30-minute call. And the reason is why I want to understand where you're coming from, where you are today in this situation, where you like to go, so we can design an advisory board that brings you 25% revenue increases and 18% more productivity, with a faster implementation than hiring one executive, with a lower overhead than a big consulting company, with no talent locked in, and a swappable members every 6 months. Right. So let's pause here today. Have a great day, and